All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another DC Worlds Collide video. This is Mr. Squirrel. As always, glad to have you here. So, what I want to do is I was thinking about making another top 10 tier list, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I don't know if that's going to be the greatest because it's not going to change much. I really want to do it with the addition of Kyle. I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. I don't think Kyle really changes a whole heck of a lot. Unfortunately, right now, I think he needs a buff. I already made a video on that. If you want to go see why I think he needs a buff, where I think he needs a buff, you can go watch that video. In this, instead, what I wanted to do is before I've made videos talking about like different teams, like the burn team, sacrifice team, I'll come back to those. What I actually want to do now is rate the tanks, the DPS, and the supports we have in the game. And I think that'll actually be a much more efficient videos, and I will I'll try to do these right now. I think we're going to be going kind of into a little bit of a lull right now, and which is kind of weird to say that out loud because it's also like, well, game feels like a little bit of in a lull and they need to kind of give more content, but that's another video for another day. Okay, let's talk a little about tanks and who I think are some of the best tanks in the game, who are tanks I think you should really be investing in, tanks I don't think you need to invest too heavily in, and then talk through those tanks right now. So I want to also do this in the terms of the context of the game right now, because I think I actually need a minute. Whoa, hello. Sorry, I just, that like tripped me out. Okay, sorry. So what I wanted to highlight is who I think are the best tanks right now. And now some of these people are going to disagree with a little bit. And that's fine. You know, these things are completely subjective. So it says no, don't bother, but this is just my list right now, and then we'll move things around. I just needed a place to, I need to isolate the tanks. We got a lot of tanks in this game right now. There's been a lot. And I'm going to start with who I think is currently the best, probably one of the best tanks in the game, just because of their accessibility, and that's going to be Nightwing. I've talked extensively about Nightwing and why I think he's probably one of the best tanks, if not one of the better characters in the game. It's just because he has such a high block chance. Block is very OP in this game. You pair him with Ocean Master, he gets more block. He does damage when he's getting hit. He gets buffs. Yada yada yada. He's just overall a great character. He's very free to play. You can pick him up from the Elseworld shop. It's like you play the game, you get free copies of this man, and he just helps your account immensely. There's really nothing more to it. He is just one of the better characters in the game, and he is quite possibly one of one if not the best tank in the game. Now, I'm going to say this, paired with him that I think is equally as crazily broken as him is going to be John Stewart. I think these two are the best tanks in the game, which is crazy to think about because people used to rank John very, very low. You will see a video coming out. If not, it's already come out, but I have a badge 30 rank 10 John, and I will say he is on par with Nightwing. The amount of just wallness that he is probably one of the strongest walls in the game, and quite possibly one of the hardest characters to just kind of get through because of the amount of shield that he gets. He gets 100% shield. He gets 2 free ult essentially in a fight. That means the first 4 turns you don't need to do anything, and he will just cast his ult left and right, and it means you're dealing with the character, like you're dealing with something that is almost quite possibly one of the hardest characters to deal with in the game. I actually think overall he is, like, once he gets a team, he will overtake Nightwing. That is not even a question in my mind. Once he gets a better teams, he will actually completely overtake Nightwing in terms of his ability to tank. You can't throw him on the block team right now, unfortunately, because of how shields interact with block. Ocean Master isn't going to be countering straight off of John. He'll counter off other characters, but he does work well on the block team just because of the ability to counter. So there is that. Coming back to this, I think the next best tank in the game, the next best wall is going to be, and he's not even classified as a tank, he's classified as an attacker, is going to be DCU Superman. Everyone knows this. He got a buff. He is very, very strong. Not only does he do a lot of damage, he heals like insane amounts. Mine is built like a tank. You can build him as an attacker too, and he does a lot of single target damage. I do like him better as a tank just because of his stat of how much healing he's doing. So I do think it's kind of, you build him however you want. But I do think he's one of the better tanks in the game. And I think because of his second life or his cheat death ability on top of this, he's essentially got 2 lives, very similar to John. John doesn't have 2 lives, but he gets a shield that's his entire HP bar. Superman gets just another life. Overall, it does crazy, crazy things. I think both of these characters are absolutely broken together, or not broken together, just broken in general. They are also single target. You can't throw them on a single target team. And so there's so many ways you can, they're both amazing characters. The next character I think that we need to talk about is going to be Aquaman. Now, Here's the thing about Aquaman. Aquaman is an interesting one. You're probably gonna be thinking to myself yourself, why am I ranking this man at S? There's only one way this man becomes an uber duper tank, and it's important to acknowledge he only becomes an uber duper tank if Mara is here. However, Mara, I want to highlight, is not a great tank. She's very good, but I don't think she's a crazy tank. She does a lot of damage. She is very tanky, but she's not really doing a lot for your team. She's kind of a selfish tank in the sense that she still takes damage, is my point. And what's kind of weird about Mara and Aquaman is they're on like a sacrifice team, and you want to build a lot of HP, right? Because, you know, tanks want a lot of HP. However, with sacrifice, that does and does not work because you're still sacking off that HP. So they want block and HP, but Mara also wants some attack because she does a lot of damage. But you also have to pair, if you are running Aquaman, you're forcing Mara to run in the same row as Aquaman. So you need to then build her very tanky. This creates some slight issues with him, but at the same time, Aquaman is so much utility that he is a support with one line that makes him a tank, which is, you know, copy Mara's passives, which just makes this man overall, he's got so much recuperate, and then, you know, he's getting 35% damage reduction with 100% crit damage reduction because of Mara's Zebel armor. It's nuts. However, if you're not running him with Mara, then this man ain't a tank. But with Mara, he is one of the craziest tanks in the world. It just creates a really unique, like they're yin and yang. They do, well, not just much yin and yang, but they do so much work together. And overall, I think they're absolutely amazing. Now, one more character that I think is at the top of these lists, and people will probably argue with a lot of this, and that's, again, totally fine. I'm okay with people arguing. I'm not okay. I want people to argue and push back. But I am going to say, I think Penguin, rank 10 badge 30 Penguin, is legitimately one of the best tanks in the game. I actually think he is just a upgraded version of Blue Beetle. People can argue with that. I just think he gives the damage reduction way more freely than Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle needs to build up. He does not. He just needs to get his umbrella up and he's good to go. You'll see a video with him badge 30 rank 10. He's cray cray. That's all I'm going to say to that. All right, let's talk a little about and these are what I would consider the 5 best tanks in the game. Did already put Mara in B. I don't think she's a great single target, but I don't think she's the best tank in the world. She does sit around 55% damage reduction. So there is that. She's fast. It's just she relies heavily on Aquaman. She herself by herself is not a great tank. She just relies heavily on Aquaman. Okay, let's go to the next row. And this one's going to be a little tricky in the sense that once we start getting here, what ends up happening is a lot of these characters are really good main tanks, and now I'm going to be starting to deal with more off tanks. These are characters that really struggle a little bit to kind of keep up with the amount of damage they're going to be receiving. However, I will say this, Grodd is, I would say, actually borderline A to S. I think he's still a phenomenal character. He does, you know, stats are going to be a little bit lower because he's an epic, but overall he is a phenomenal character. He has, you know, 2 turns, the first 2 turns, he is just an absolute monster of a tank. He's not taking any damage in those first 2 turns because he got so much damage reduction because of his passive, and then because of all the debuffs that are going on. As long as you're running him on a debuff team, you can run a debuff team with these 2, and you run him main tank, him off tank, and you're good to go. I do think a debuff team with these 2 in the front is absolutely cracked. It is probably one of the better teams in the game. For PvE, PvP content, it might struggle a little bit more, but overall, Grodd very good. Now, let's talk. This one is tricky. I'm going to go with characters that are a little bit more that have got a buff. I think that Bride is good. I don't think she's amazing. I think she's good. I wish she got more damage reduction when she revived, but she has a revive, so there is that. Her ult is okay. It gives hard hit, which is really good. She synergizes very well with the Judo Master team, but outside of that, she can struggle a little bit. I do think that, again, she didn't get enough damage reduction when she revives. I wish she just had some more sitting around in her kit. She's sitting regularly around 30% damage reduction, but she doesn't get that crit damage reduction. She is critting a lot, though, and she does do damage, but I don't really want tanks to do damage, which is kind of the problem here, is that she is good, but she doesn't do... She's not as tanky as I'd like her to be, and I think with the Judo Master team, they do struggle a little bit with tankiness. This brings me to another character that I want to talk a little bit about, and I think the community kind of underrates him. And again, I'm assuming these characters are going to be a little bit higher in rank. Superman badge 30, people underestimate that he has 2 turns of invulnerability. That's 2 turns that this man just doesn't die. So, mind you, that's kind of crazy. And he does a decent amount of damage too, on top of all these things. So, he's got 2 turns where he just doesn't die. He's just invulnerable for 2 turns. That means for 2 turns, you have to sit there and just waste damage on him. I don't think we talk about that enough. I think he's very like on when we start getting into very, 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 very hard stages where the deficit is so high that you were just going to die. Like your tanks will die. He can prevent that from happening because not your team from dying, but from the front line. Like if there's this really strong single target front line attack, he ain't dying. He will just sit there and be alive for the next 2 rounds, as run him very slow, and he's just gonna sit there and he's gonna be like, all right, for 2 turns, this man is just gonna be alive, right? Like no worries, he's just gonna survive. Um, and I think there's a lot to say with that. That is very, very good. Now, this is going to bring us to another character. I do think Blue Beetle is still amazing. I think he's a very good character. I really like Blue Beetle a lot. I just think that it takes him a long time to build. It takes him a while to build up fully. He needs to get hit, crit. You are getting that crit damage reduction, but I do think he's still an amazing character. He synergizes incredibly well with probably one of the best teams in the game, which is Block. I think he overall just great, 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 great character. Now, the next characters are going to be hard because I'm evaluating all of this based on tanking. And I do think the more I play around with Peacemaker, the more I kind of interact with him and see how he's operating. I think in a PvE context, he is very good. I think his shelter every round is very good. The healing is pretty decent, and he's giving a lot to the team. The problem is that he has 2 parts of his kit that I think are really great, and then the rest of his kit that I'm not the biggest fan of. Well, 3 parts. His passives are good. I like his passive a lot. I will say this, and I continually will, and I saw this on the Discord, and I really agree with this point. If his passive was not Eagly, but instead was Vigilante's passive, where he got healed up when he went below 50%, I actually think this man would be probably one of the best tanks in the game. But because they gave him Eagly instead, and it's much more of like a damage focus, granted, again, Fragile is amazing, Armor Break's amazing. He's not a great tank. He does a lot in terms of utility, but he's not a great tank. And I think that let me say, I think he's a good tank. I notice I didn't say a bad tank. It's just he is very susceptible to superpower damage. In PvE, you can manipulate things and you can control. In PvP, not as much. And you go up against superpower, this dude does get hit hard. Because he does no reduction to superpower damage. None. Does have to crit damage, but not to superpower damage. And in line with him, I think... So I want to talk about this next character in the sense that I think Swamp Thing is good. And at badge 20, as the more you rank up this character, he gets more access to damage reduction. He is not susceptible to debuffs. So like burn, poison, like he and frostbite, he is very strong against. Like he is a direct counter to actually DCU Superman. He is very good. He does counter a lot of teams in terms of his ability to take damage. I do think the new poison artifact makes him incredibly good. Because it gives that damage reduction to basics. He is still susceptible to ults and getting crit. But overall, I do think he's very, very good. He's more of a utility character, though. So I actually like him in the back as almost like a support. His healing is off the charts. And so I will say his healing is crazy. He does give the defense increase, so he does have that buff to defense. What is it called? It's not firm stand. Sturdy armor, which again, he can stack tons of sturdy armor, tons of healing. He does so much for your team. He is a better healer. I think he's probably the best healer in the game, which is crazy. I think he's more of a support than he is an actual tank. But overall, I think he's very, very, very good. Now let's go to B here. Now I will say this: Bane sits in between A and B for me. I think this is one of those characters. I'm going to just say this. I don't have the most extent with Bane. I think you could argue him in B and you can argue him in A. I think he can go in both. His stun is really annoying. To me, he's in line with Mara. He does really good utility. really big pain in the butt, but he can't be killed. A lot of these characters here are a little bit tankier. They have more ways to survive. He does struggle a little bit in that regard. I think he's very good. I'm not arguing that he's bad. Again, I'm saying he reminds me a lot of Mara in the sense that I mean, not so much in the sense of Mara. That's a bad relationship. He's very similar to like Superman, but he does the stun. It's his stun, his alt stun that heals, and it's just it can really be annoying. But then like if he's not stunning, I do feel like I can just burst him out. He doesn't really scare me. In line with that, I think Lex is very good. Unfortunately, the more I play Lex, the more I've been sidelining him a lot, which is an unfortunate reality. It's just the alt increase, the alt cost increase is very annoying. I wish they just made it 3 and called it a day. And not just increase its alt. Its cost. Now there's that. But his utility for the team though is very good. He takes time to build up. He's not a good main tank. Now, Bizarro is a really interesting character. I think he is good, but the problem is he also just needs, he's not a main tank at all. He makes whatever character is your main tank even tankier. But his buffs weren't that substantial, which is, again, I don't know why they buffed him in the first place. Yeah, he's an off tank, but even if you run him in the off tank role, he can get kind of hurt. I do think on like a debuff team, it's kind of interesting. You'd run like him, John, and Grodd, and then you could actually even have Bizarro in the back with Sinestro and like Raven, and that team just will never die. Maybe you do kind of run into some issues with the backline maybe getting murked out, but it is what it is. I'm just saying I think he's good. The problem is he doesn't really have a place right now, but he is good. John, I put at D because he's not a tank. That's my thing with John, is he's like a support, almost attacker that on a healing team is just, if you put him on a sacrifice team with Constantine, he's very good as just a backline attacker, because then he's getting healing, but he doesn't have enough damage reduction in the front line to survive. He can get outright killed very quickly. But in terms of being in the back and then on a sacrifice team, he's giving your team damage reduction. He's doing a lot. So as a just utility, good. But the problem that you're like, well, why isn't he with Swamp Thing then? He's just not doing the same amount of stuff that Swamp Thing, anywhere near what Swamp Thing is doing for his team. And I'll actually put him at C. I think he's okay. I just think that he's not a tank. And so he's very niche. I think he works really well. If he's on the sacrifice team, he's as a tank, though he's not a tank. He just works well on the sacrifice team, but he himself is not a tank. He needs to be in a very specific comp, and that's the way to work. And then finally, Vixen, don't even bother. The stat changes were nothing. Doesn't do anything. I'm sorry. Yeah, she's good. Not really. No, she's not good at all. And then I don't have any of the elites here because I don't think you should be raising up elites. That's my general take. I'm trying to think, did I miss anyone? I mean, you can argue some of these characters maybe being on like Guy could be considered a tank. Yes and no. I have Guy as like a tank, but the problem with that is he does get murked out pretty quickly, though. Unfortunately, he needs, the Kronas is the only way he becomes a tank. If you have Kronas on Guy, I do think Guy can be maybe like a B-ish class character. He does get murked though, which is my problem. I actually find even with all the defense increases and stuff like that on the Mr. T team and Kronas, he does get actually still murked out pretty hard. He needs to auto, which takes him a little bit. Once this man autos though, oh dear Lord, he's best tank in the game. But the problem is in like PvP, PvE content, he'll just get outright murked before that even happens. So that's my general take on these, on the I don't know why there's 2 Superman. Don't ask me why that happened. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I'm missing. I mean, you could technically argue Dr. Phosphorus, but he's not the greatest. That superpower reduction isn't. He takes more damage from physical, which means autos are going to just outright murk him out. I think that pretty much hits every point that I was trying to get at. These are generally what I think are the better characters to invest in. I do think these top 5 are your best tanks in the game. The A is still very good, but these are just my general take on who I think are the best tanks in the game. All right, folks, I hope this video helps. And as always, remember, failing is just your first attempt in learning.